My name is Dorothy, but people call me Dot, and I'm 68 years old. I've lived long enough to see kindness twisted into weakness and loyalty dressed up as obligation. But nothing prepared me for the sight of my daughter-in-law, Amanda, standing in my own living room with a notary at her side, his briefcase snapping open like a coffin lid. Amanda's smile was as cold as December frost. "This won't take long," she said smoothly, as if she were offering me tea instead of trying to erase my name from my own life. The notary shuffled the stack of papers like a card dealer, and for a second it really did feel like he was laying out my funeral. I smiled back, steady as stone. "Perfect timing," I told them. "But before we get started, let's make a quick stop at the police station. They've been waiting to hear about those documents I sent them yesterday." The color drained from Amanda's face faster than water down a broken drain. Her polished mask cracked, just slightly, but enough. The notary froze mid-page turn, looking between us as if he'd walked into the wrong play. "If you're watching this, you're probably wondering how I got here, facing off against the woman who thought she could outsmart a 68-year-old widow. This is the story of betrayal, humiliation, and a very overdue justice. And it all began just 2 days earlier. At my son Michael's wedding, I wasn't always the woman people see now. Gray hair, a few more wrinkles than I'd like, walking a little slower when my knees complain in the morning. For most of my life, I carried everything on my own back, and I was proud of that. I'd lost my husband Richard 30 years ago when Michael was still in college. He died young, sudden heart attack at 48. In one night, I went from being half of a marriage to being the whole foundation of a family. I never remarried. Not because I didn't have offers. There were men who tried, but because I had already given my vows once and my heart stayed loyal to the man who shared my best years. So I worked. Hard. Double shifts at the country club, cleaning houses on the weekends, pinching pennies wherever I could. There's a particular kind of discipline you learn when every dollar you save goes to keep the lights on and put your child through school. I gave Michael the education his father always dreamed he'd have. It wasn't easy. Sometimes dinner was a can of beans or generic cereal. Sometimes I walked 3 miles to the store to save on gas. But when Michael got his degree, I thought, just for a moment, it had all been worth it. Those sacrifices, those years of choosing denial over desire, they became symbols in my life, like the check I'd written to Michael and Amanda, $15,000, the biggest sum I'd ever let go of at once. I wrote down payment clearly in the memo line, almost as if I were carving my contribution into stone. It wasn't just money, it was proof that every penny I'd saved had meaning. Then there was the deed, that piece of paper with my name sitting right beside my son's. It wasn't much to look at, just typed words and signatures, but it represented more than a house. It was a safeguard. A reminder that I hadn't spent my whole life building something just to end up forgotten in a rented room somewhere. I had a stake. And tucked away on my dresser, in a simple wooden frame, was the photo of me and Michael standing in front of the country club. He was about 12 in the picture, awkward smile, hair sticking up in the back because he'd run from the soccer field straight into my arms. That club was where I worked so many nights, serving prime rib and champagne to people who never even looked at me twice. Yet in that moment, captured on film, I wasn't a waitress or a widow. I was just a proud mother holding on to her son. That photo reminded me why I did it all. Which is why standing in the same church where Richard and I had exchanged vows felt like walking through a time machine. Michael looked so proud in his tuxedo, and Amanda, well, she was radiant. I won't deny it. Her dress was elegant, her smile flawless, her every move rehearsed down to perfection. For a few minutes, I let myself believe the best. Maybe Amanda really did love my son. Maybe, in welcoming her, I'd be gaining a daughter and not losing my boy. The ceremony itself was beautiful. White roses, a string quartet, polished vows. I could almost hear Richard's voice in the back of my head, teasing me about crying too much. Don't smudge the mascara, Dot. But the reception, that's where the cracks began to show. The country club's ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and laughter. I knew that room too well, though not as a guest. For years, I'd slipped in and out unseen, serving those same glasses of champagne, memorizing faces that never remembered mine. This time, I was seated at the head table. I thought I'd earned my place. Amanda rose to speak, her voice syrupy sweet, and began weaving a story that at first sounded like flattery. Dorothy's been such a help, she said, gesturing toward me with that gracious smile. She's been living with us for months, helping with the down payment on our house. At first, people smiled politely, nodding as though they admired my sacrifice. But then she added that word, helping. Not gifting, not contributing, helping. Like I'd been patching up a hole in their roof out of pity. The women at her table exchanged glances. I saw it. That flicker of judgment. Poor old Dot. Can't manage on her own, needs to cling to her son and his wife for survival. And Amanda kept going. She's practically family, she said, with that precise, poisonous inflection. Practically. As if 5 years of dating and 9 months of wedding planning hadn't been enough to cement me in her world. As if after decades of being Michael's mother, I still needed to audition for a part in my own family. Then came the final humiliation. Amanda raised her glass, all grace and poise, and announced to the entire room that I'd been financially supporting them. It's inspiring, she said, as if I were some ancient relic whose only value was measured by sacrifice. Some mothers step back, but not Dorothy. She's shown me that a mother's job is never really done. The applause that followed wasn't admiration. It was pity wrapped in politeness. I felt every pair of eyes drilling into me, their silent verdict passed. Dependent, needy, clinging. I smiled, because I've learned to wear a mask as well as anyone. But inside, something tightened. I realized Amanda wasn't just careless with her words. She was strategic. Every phrase carried a sting hidden beneath the sugar. That night, when I lay awake in the guest room at their house, no, at my house, though she'd started calling it hers, I replayed Amanda's speech, practically family. Helping, sacrifice. Words sharpened like knives, and for the first time, I wondered if Amanda hadn't just married my son for love. Maybe she married him for something else entirely. The seeds of suspicion had been planted, and though I didn't yet know how quickly they'd grow, I could feel the soil shifting beneath me. The morning after the wedding should have been quiet coffee, maybe a leftover slice of cake for breakfast, the kind of morning where you replay the joy of the day before. Instead, I came down the stairs to find Amanda sitting at the kitchen table with a man in a gray suit. His briefcase was propped neatly on a chair, his pen already uncapped. "Dorothy," Amanda chirped, bright as sunlight but sharp underneath. "This is Mr. Patterson from Sterling Legal Services. We just need to go over a few things." I tightened my robe and poured myself coffee with steady hands. Ambush tactics don't work on someone who's been through labor, widowhood, and 30 years of bills. "What kind of things?" Amanda glanced at the notary, then leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. "Michael and I have been talking, and we think it's time to make some changes. You've been so generous with the house down payment, and we want to make sure you're properly taken care of as you get older." Older. There it was, the word she dangled like a warning bell. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. "Mrs. Henderson, the plan is quite simple. Your son and daughter-in-law have arranged for you to move into Sunset Manor, a very reputable assisted living facility. They've already made a deposit on your behalf." My coffee turned bitter. Sunset Manor. Without asking. Without even a conversation. Amanda reached across the table, her hand brushing the documents as though they were nothing more than recipes. "Michael worries about you, Dorothy. The stairs here, the risk of falling, forgetting things. He just wants peace of mind." Forgetful? The word cut. I was 68, not 98. My mind worked faster than most people's half my age. Amanda's smile softened, but her eyes glittered. "We've all noticed little slips. Misplacing your keys. Mixing up dates. It happens. And you're almost 70 now. Almost 70. Rounding me up like an expired carton of milk." Mr. Patterson slid the first document toward me. "This outlines the transfer of the property deed to your son and daughter-in-law exclusively. In exchange, your first year at Sunset Manor would be fully covered." It's a very generous arrangement. My hand stilled on the coffee mug. "Generous," I repeated. 1 year. And after that? Amanda shrugged delicately, like it was a problem for some other day. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Maybe you'll love it so much you won't want to leave." The audacity was breathtaking. I had helped build this house, scraped my savings for it, put my name on the deed, and here she was, erasing me like a line item. "I'll need time to think about this," I said, standing slowly, forcing calm into my voice. Amanda's smile faltered, the mask slipping for just a second. "Dorothy, Mr. Patterson has other appointments today. It would be much more convenient if we handled this now." "Convenient for you," I said evenly, "not for me." The notary cleared his throat again, visibly uncomfortable. "Of course, Mrs. Henderson. Take all the time you need. These are big decisions." I caught the flicker of irritation in Amanda's eyes. She wasn't used to being told no. "Where's Michael?" I asked, though I already knew. Amanda's answer came too quick. "At the gym. He finds financial discussions stressful, so he asked me to take care of it. Newlywed stress, you understand." Yes. I understood all too well. Michael had always hidden from hard conversations. When he was 12 and wanted a bike, he left me a note instead of asking in person. At 17, after crashing his car, he made his girlfriend call me. At 42, he was still sending intermediaries to soften the blow of his choices. But I wasn't 12 or 17 or a girlfriend. I was his mother, and I wasn't about to be written out of my own life. I set my mug down, deliberately loud against the table. "I'm not signing anything today." Amanda inhaled slowly, lips pressed so tight they blanched white. Then the smile snapped back into place. "Of course, Dorothy. We'll revisit it later." But in her eyes, the calculation was already shifting. She thought she had me cornered, but she'd overlooked one thing. I've spent my entire life surviving schemes bigger than hers. And I had no intention of being anyone's easy prey. The moment Amanda and her pet notary left, I shut the door and leaned against it, letting the silence swallow the house. My pulse was still a hammer in my ears, but my mind was sharpening. This was no longer just about dignity. It was about survival. I went straight upstairs to the closet in the master bedroom, the one place Amanda never bothered with because it smelled faintly of mothballs and dust. Behind an old suitcase tucked into the bottom shelf sat a fireproof metal box. My late husband, William, always called it our anchor. His handwriting still scrawled on the masking tape label, "Important papers." "Do not lose." The key was hidden inside a hollowed-out Reader's Digest on the nightstand. Amanda thought I was forgetful. She never suspected I remembered exactly where everything lived. With a click, the box opened. Inside was my history, neat as a ledger, the deed to the house with both my name and Michael's written in crisp ink, the canceled $15,000 check I'd written years ago to secure the down payment, a check that had nearly emptied my account but made me prouder than anything, and, most intriguing, the conditional power of attorney my lawyer had drafted after William's passing. A clause Amanda didn't know about. Michael could only act on my behalf if I were declared medically incompetent by 2 physicians. Not Amanda. Not anyone else. 2 doctors. I smiled for the first time that morning. She thought she was clever. She hadn't even scratched the surface. As I sorted through the documents, memory after memory surfaced. The first time Amanda came into our lives, she played the part of the sweet, eager fiancée. She asked endless questions about William, about our family traditions, about how I'd managed alone after his passing. She made it sound like admiration. Looking back, I see it was reconnaissance. She was mapping me, learning where my vulnerabilities lay. She noticed, for instance, how proud I was of paying the mortgage alone after William's death, and how I'd framed that canceled check in my mind as proof of my independence. At the wedding reception, she twisted it into a punchline. Dorothy was so generous, Amanda had told the guests, champagne glass raised high. She chipped in what she could for the house. We call her our little investor. Laughter bubbled from the country club crowd, their pearls glinting in the light. They didn't hear the blade inside her joke. I did. She'd reduced my sacrifice to a contribution, like a child putting coins in a jar. That was when the seed of suspicion planted itself deep inside me. Now, days later, the pieces were snapping into place. Amanda had slipped before, always in small ways. "You're almost 70, Dorothy," she'd say, adding years to my age as if shaving away my worth. Or the mocking tone when I misplaced my keys, "It happened, sweetheart." Memory goes. She wanted me to doubt myself, to question whether I was still sharp enough to defend what was mine, but I wasn't the one fumbling. She was, and I'd been paying attention. I spread the papers across my bedspread like a general mapping a battlefield. Each one was a weapon. The deed, the canceled check, the conditional power of attorney. All proof that I wasn't some fragile old woman she could shuffle into a retirement home. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Carlson Law Office," came the receptionist's voice. "This is Dorothy Henderson," I said, my tone clipped but calm. "I need to speak to Mr. Carlson. Tell him it's about the Henderson estate documents." There was a pause, then a rustle. Moments later, a warm baritone filled the line. "Dot? It's been a long time." "Too long," I said. "I need your help. And it has to stay quiet." We arranged a meeting for the next morning. My old lawyer still owed me a favor, and I planned to collect. That night, I made copies of everything, 3 sets. One stayed in the fireproof box, one went into my handbag, and the third I sealed in an envelope addressed to Carlson's office. If Amanda ever tried to misplace my originals, she'd find out I was 2 steps ahead. The final call was the hardest. I dialed the local police department, my finger trembling just slightly on the buttons. When the desk sergeant answered, I lowered my voice. "This is Dorothy Henderson. I'd like to flag a potential fraud situation. It involves property and possible coercion." The sergeant was polite but cautious. "Do you have documentation, ma'am?" "I do." "Plenty. Bring it down when you're ready. We'll log it confidentially." I hung up, a strange steadiness washing over me. My trap was taking shape. The next morning, Amanda appeared at my door again, all sugary smiles. "Dorothy, have you had time to think about what we discussed?" I nodded, softening my voice, letting her think she was winning. "Yes, dear." "You caught me off guard, that's all. I'll need a little more explanation before I make a decision." Her relief was instant. She thought I was bending. "Of course," she cooed. "We can go over everything together. I'll make it simple." Simple. That word again, as if I couldn't follow. As if I hadn't already mapped every step she planned to take. Inside, I felt the steel of my resolve harden. Outwardly, I smiled, played the part of the compliant, grateful widow. Because that's the thing about predators, they never notice when the prey is watching, waiting, and sharpening her teeth. And Amanda had no idea she was already walking straight into my snare. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with the phone glowing in my hand. My thumb hovered, then tapped out a message to Michael. "Me, your wife, came with a notary today. She asked me to sign away the house." The dots pulsed. Then nothing. Minutes later, a single reply appeared. "Michael, Mom, don't stress yourself. Amanda just wants to make things easier for everyone." I stared at the words until they blurred. Easier. That was his father's word when the cancer treatments failed. "It'll be easier this way, Dot." But this was different. This was my son dismissing me with the same softness a parent uses on a child who doesn't understand. "Me, do you know what she's trying to do?" "Michael, it's complicated. I'll come by next week." Let Amanda handle it for now. The next week. Always the next week. My jaw tightened. Either he was too afraid to stand up to his wife, or worse, he was in on it. I didn't know which possibility burned more. The following morning, I went for a walk to steady myself. On the corner, Mrs. Prast. Whitmore from church stopped me with her usual half-sweet smile. "Dorothy, dear," she chirped, patting my hand. "Amanda tells us you'll be 75 this year." Imagine, still managing on your own. Such spirit. 75? I nearly laughed. I wasn't even 70 yet. My birthday was months away, and Amanda had already aged me by half a decade. I managed a polite chuckle, but inside my stomach coiled. She was planting a narrative, one careful seed at a time, until the whole neighborhood believed I was drifting into senility. It wasn't just a power play at home. She was staging a performance for the world. That night, as I carried laundry upstairs, I paused outside Amanda's guest room. She was staying there while Michael was busy at work. Her voice floated through the cracked door, sharp and efficient. Yes, the transfer will be finalized by the end of the week. Don't worry, I have the paperwork under control. I froze, a towel slipping from my hands. She wasn't talking about a plan. She was confirming a deadline. This wasn't opportunism. It wasn't heat-of-the-moment ambition. It was orchestrated, rehearsed, and now almost finished. I backed away quietly, heart pounding. My first instinct was to march in, demand answers, scream loud enough to wake the entire block. But my husband's voice echoed in my memory, calm and steady. Paperwork is the only weapon that never misses its target. William had believed in preparation, in proof over emotion. And suddenly, I understood. Amanda was building a story of a frail, confused woman who needed to be managed. If I lost my temper, I'd give her exactly what she wanted, evidence of instability. No, this required precision. Back in my room, I laid the papers across the bed once more, the edges lit by the soft lamp glow. The deed with my name bold and undeniable. The check that bore my signature and sacrifice. The power of attorney clause that Amanda had overlooked. My arsenal. But more than that, I now carried clarity. Amanda wasn't circling like some scavenger. She was already inside the walls, poisoning the well, preparing the villagers to believe her version of events. And Michael, my son, my only child, had chosen silence, whether out of fear or complicity. The first battle had been waged without me even realizing it. But the war? The war was only just beginning, and Amanda had underestimated the widow she was trying to erase. I folded the documents carefully, slipped them back into the envelope, and whispered to the empty room, "Let's see how sharp my aim still is." By the following week, the house I had built with my husband felt less like a sanctuary and more like a stage for Amanda's theater. Little pamphlets began appearing on the coffee table, the kitchen counter, even tucked under my teacup saucer, as if by accident. Sunset Manor, where golden years shine bright. Smiling seniors played cards in stock photo gardens, their faces glowing with the kind of cheer that could only be manufactured by an advertising agency. "Just an idea," Amanda said breezily one afternoon when I found the stack by the mailbox. "They have excellent staff, round-the-clock care, memory programs." "You'd be so comfortable there." Memory programs. The words landed like a slap. I nodded politely, folding the glossy brochure in half and sliding it into the trash. She smiled as if she hadn't noticed. Michael became a ghost in my own home. He left for work earlier, came home later, and more often than not, didn't come home at all. Amanda explained his absence with the casual cruelty of someone who knew she had already won. "Michael's busy," she said. "He doesn't want you worrying him with paperwork, as if my name on a deed was just scribbles on paper." At night, I lay awake in the quiet, staring at the ceiling where shadows of tree branches twisted like accusing fingers. My son had chosen avoidance over confrontation. It broke something in me, not my will, but the soft place where a mother once believed her child would protect her, so I played along. When Amanda accidentally called me 75 again in front of a neighbor, I laughed and corrected myself. Oh dear, perhaps I am forgetful. I let the woman believe what Amanda wanted her to believe, a fragile old widow slipping. Behind closed doors, I copied every document: deed, check, power of attorney. 3 sets, sealed in envelopes. One hidden in the flour canister, another slipped beneath the lining of my dresser drawer, the last locked in my purse. If Amanda wanted a war of stories, I would arm myself with facts. The pressure tightened when Amanda organized another meeting with the notary. This time she announced it over dinner like she was inviting me to brunch. "Thursday, 10 a.m., she said, spearing asparagus with a smug flick of her wrist. "We'll go through everything again. I know you hate these details." I smiled back, feigning fog. I suppose I do lose track of things. Her eyes gleamed. She thought she had me cornered. But that night, I overheard the truth. Amanda was on the phone in the den, her voice hushed but giddy. "Oh, it's practically done. She's pliable. By the end of the month, the house will be in my name, and Michael and I can finally renovate. Imagine what this place will look like when it's ours. Ours." The words stabbed deeper than any insult. I stood frozen in the hallway, my breath caught. For a moment, grief hollowed me out. My son's silence, Amanda's arrogance, the way my sacrifices, every hour I'd worked, every dollar I'd saved had been reduced to wallpaper they planned to tear down. But grief hardened quickly into steel. The next morning I opened my jewelry box, a place I hadn't touched in years. Inside lay my wedding ring, dull with age but still carrying the weight of every vow William and I had made. I slipped it onto my finger, the gold cool against my skin. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a reminder. I had survived losing him. I had survived scraping pennies into a down payment. I had raised a boy into a man, even if that man now chose silence. I could survive Amanda too. I gathered my evidence into a neat folder. Each document slipped into a clear sleeve, crisp and undeniable. My hands trembled not from fear, but from the gravity of what I was about to do. First, the police. A quiet visit to flag potential fraud, no drama, no scene. The officer listened carefully, his eyes scanning each page. "You did the right thing, ma'am," he said, tucking my copies into an evidence file. "We'll keep this noted. If they try to act, we'll be ready." Then, my lawyer, an old colleague of William's, long retired but sharp as ever. His eyebrows shot up as he read the conditional power of attorney clause Amanda had clearly missed. "She can't touch this house without your consent," he said firmly, "and if she pushes harder, we'll make sure the court knows exactly what she's been attempting." For the first time in weeks, I exhaled fully. When I returned home, Amanda was waiting at the dining table, Sunset Manor brochures fanned out like a dealer showing her winning hand. "You'll thank me one day," she said sweetly, as though she'd already won. But I only touched the ring on my finger, feeling William's presence steady me. Amanda saw only a weary widow, but inside me, fire burned. She thought I was retreating. What she didn't realize was that I had already taken the first step toward striking back. The morning of the meeting, the house was quiet, almost reverent, like it knew something was about to break. I wore my oldest cardigan, its sleeves sagging at the wrists, and left my hair a little untidy. Let Amanda see what she wanted to see, a frail woman softened by age, weary, ready to yield. When the doorbell rang, I shuffled slowly to answer. Amanda swept inside with her usual perfume cloud and the notary trailing behind, briefcase in hand. Her heels clicked on the hardwood like war drums. "Dorothy," she said, her voice sweet as poisoned honey, "today we're going to make this official. For your comfort, of course. Everyone agrees this is best for you." The notary smiled politely, already reaching for his papers. I sank into the armchair, my hands folded neatly in my lap. My cardigan slipped from one shoulder, and I let it. Let Amanda believe she had me cornered. She began her practice script. "You're almost 70, she said, voice dripping with false compassion. "It's only natural to feel overwhelmed by legal documents. That's why Michael and I want to take care of this for you. Sunset Manor has an opening next month, and with the house in our name, we can ensure your comfort. Isn't that right?" Her words hovered like gnats. Overwhelmed. Forgetful. Almost 70. I looked up at the notary, his pen poised. "So," I said softly, "this is just a transfer?" Amanda leaned closer, smiling as if to reassure a child. "Just a formality." That was when I let the mask slip. My voice steadied. "Then perhaps you'll explain this." From beneath the cushion of my chair, I drew the folder I had prepared. The notary paused, frowning as I slid out the deed with my name clear and bold across it. Then came the canceled check, $15,000, my handwriting steady on the line, the notation reading, "down payment." Finally, the conditional power of attorney clause, neat and irrefutable. Amanda's smile cracked, just barely. "You've misunderstood," she said quickly, her eyes darting to the notary. "This is old paperwork. Outdated." "No," I said calmly, "this is ownership. This is sacrifice. And this," I tapped the clause, "is protection." The notary looked uncomfortable. His pen lowered to the table. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said to Amanda, "you didn't disclose this. You assured me she had no legal interest." Amanda's voice sharpened. She doesn't understand what she's waving around. She's confused. But her mask had slipped too far. For the first time, her polished confidence sounded brittle. I straightened in my chair. The police have a copy of all of this already. They flagged your attempts as potential fraud. The notary's face paled. He snapped his briefcase shut. I won't be involved in this further, he muttered, standing. Good day. And just like that, he was gone. Amanda's carefully choreographed performance reduced to a two-person audience. Amanda's composure shattered. You ungrateful hag, she spat, the venom unfiltered now. I have done everything for this family. Do you think anyone would put up with your whining, your forgetfulness, your constant need to be the martyr? Her voice rose, each word sharper than the last. Michael is mine now. This house will be ours. You can't stop progress with a few old receipts. The door opened mid-tirade. Michael stepped in, tie loosened, eyes wary. What's going on? Amanda whirled, her face instantly softening. She's confused again, darling. I was just trying to make things easier for her. I turned my eyes to my son. Michael, she's trying to erase me from my own home. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Mom, maybe it's for the best. Amanda just wants to help. Cowardice. That was what I saw in him, the boy who once clung to my hand, now hiding behind his wife's shadow. My heart broke, but my resolve held. I reached for the final card in my hand. I wasn't going to share this today, I said, voice low, but perhaps it's time. From the folder, I slid out a small recorder, pressing play. Amanda's voice filled the living room, unmistakable. Oh, it's practically done. She's pliable. By the end of the month, the house will be in my name, and Michael and I can finally renovate. Imagine what this place will look like when it's ours. Michael froze. The blood drained from his face as the words echoed back at him, each syllable hammering through his denial. Amanda? His voice cracked. You said. But she cut him off, her mask gone entirely. Oh, don't be so naive, Michael. Did you really think I married you for your charm? This house, your assets, your mother's savings, that is what mattered. The silence that followed was unbearable. Michael stared at her, then at me, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Finally, he whispered, You used me. Amanda scoffed, but her bravado rang hollow now. I leaned forward, my ring glinting in the light. Michael, she never wanted you. She wanted what I worked for, what your father and I built, Amanda sneered. And what will you do now, Dorothy? Hide behind your dusty papers forever? I smiled then, not the brittle smile of someone cornered, but the steady smile of someone who had already won. You see, Amanda, what you didn't know is that 3 weeks ago, I transferred my half of the deed into a trust for my granddaughter. She's the legal co-owner now. You can't touch it. Not now, not ever. The color drained from Amanda's face, her lips parting in shock. For the first time, she was speechless. Michael sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Betrayal had finally caught him, not in whispers or suspicions, but in his wife's own words. I stood, shoulders straight, cardigan slipping back into place like armor. This house will remain in the family. The real family. You wanted to erase me, Amanda, but I've already written my protection into the future. Amanda's fury boiled over. She snatched a brochure from the table, crumpling it in her fist. This isn't over, she hissed, but we both knew it was. Because paperwork. The weapon my husband always said never misses its target had struck clean and true. The flashing red and blue lights washed across the front windows like a grim sunrise. By the time the officers stepped into the living room, Amanda's shrill protests had become incoherent. She tried to snatch the deed copy from the table, but one officer firmly took her by the arm. Mrs. Whitfield, the younger officer said, addressing me with calm respect, "We'll take her in for questioning." You did the right thing bringing us evidence early. Amanda twisted in their grip, her manicured nails clawing at the air. You can't do this. She's senile. Ask anyone. Michael, tell them. But Michael only stood there, slumped in the armchair where his denial had finally crumbled. He couldn't meet my eyes. The officers led Amanda out, her heels dragging against the floor that had never been hers to claim. The slam of the front door was the sound of something ending, loud, ugly, final. Silence lingered in her absence, heavier than before. Michael finally lifted his head. His eyes were red, his lips trembling like a child caught in a lie. "Mom," he whispered, voice raw, "I didn't know I thought she loved me." I stared at him for a long time. My son, the boy who once believed monsters lived under his bed, had grown into a man who invited one into our home. My heart ached with the weight of it. He moved closer, desperation in his voice. "Please, Mom, I should have listened to you. I should have protected you. I can fix this." I shook my head. My voice was steady, sharper than I expected. "I raised you, Michael. But I will no longer raise your mistakes." His mouth opened, then closed again. He had no words left. And I had no energy left to carry his excuses. Later, when the house had quieted, I sat at the dining table and laid out the artifacts of this battle like relics. The deed still secure, now reinforced by the trust. A reminder that the foundation of this home was not paper alone, but the years of sacrifice my husband and I gave to build it. The canceled check, once a transaction, now evidence, proof that I had put my own blood and sweat into these walls. It would now help the police piece together Amanda's fraud, and the photograph, tucked in the folder, half forgotten until now. It was of me and Henry on the porch, taken the summer before he died. He had his arm slung around me, sun in his hair, that mischievous smile on his lips. I traced the outline of his face with my finger, my heart catching. "Still standing, Dorothy," the picture seemed to say. "You're still standing." And I was. Michael retreated upstairs, claiming exhaustion, though I knew it was shame. He would have to face the consequences of his weakness. The whispers at church, the sideways looks from neighbors, the inevitable truth that Amanda had used him as a ladder and kicked him down once she reached the top. That was his burden. Mine was different. Mine was to reclaim what Amanda had nearly stolen, not just the house, but my independence. I stood and walked into the bedroom. From the back of the closet, I pulled out the small suitcase I hadn't touched in years. My apartment, the one I had rented quietly after Henry's death, was still mine. I had kept the lease, kept the key. I'd thought of it as an escape once, then as a safety net. Now it felt like liberation. This house would remain in the family through the trust, secure from predators. But I no longer needed to sleep under its roof. It had been scarred by Amanda's shadow and Michael's betrayal. My future did not belong here anymore. As I slipped my wedding ring back onto my finger, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Not frail, not confused, just a woman who had survived storms fiercer than this. Henry's words echoed again in my mind. Paperwork is the only weapon that never misses its target. He had been right, but he had also underestimated me. Paper had protected me, yes, but so had grit, so had memory. So had the refusal to be erased. I closed the suitcase, slid the photo into the front pocket, and whispered aloud, "I'm still here." And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not the brittle smile of defense, but the steady smile of someone who had chosen her own ending. You know, people often look at someone my age and see fragility. They see the wrinkles, the slower steps, and they assume the mind must be just as faded. But dignity doesn't vanish with time. In fact, it sharpens, like glass worn smooth by the tide. If there's one lesson my story should teach, it's this: never underestimate an elder who has lived, loved, and lost. We carry more tools in our hearts and heads than most imagine. And we must guard them fiercely, because sometimes the greatest threat doesn't come from strangers, but from the ones who smile at your dinner table. So let me warn you, never sign away your rights blindly. Paper seems harmless, but it can erase a lifetime of sacrifice if you aren't careful. Ask questions. Demand respect. And remember, love without respect is just control in disguise. I know some of you watching have been where I've been, betrayed, dismissed, pushed aside by family or in-laws who thought you were powerless. If you have, share your story, speak it aloud. Because silence only feeds those who thrive on control. As for me, I've reclaimed my ground. My independence is intact, my dignity unbroken. And if anyone thinks age makes me easy prey, they'd best remember, I survived storms before they were even born. So I'll leave you with this. They thought they could bury me, but I was the seed. And I'm still growing.